In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 156 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm good, man. How about you?
I'm doing great. Good. I know this has been an extremely tough couple weeks for you.
It has been. You know, some of the roughest I've ever experienced.
Yeah,
but
some of the roughest in your life. And for those of you that don't know, that are listening, most of you that follow us on social media will know, our Patreon folks will know, but Gibby's dad passed away last week.
Yep.
And it's been rough. I mean, it's there's no way around it.
No.
It's a rough situation. Most people listening have experienced it.
Yeah.
What I will say that I was blown away by was the amount of support.
Yeah.
On social media, our Patreon folks, just people sending in emails, messages. I was blown away by it.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Everybody's great, man. It was so awesome.
Listeners sent flowers.
They did.
They sent you some packages. On top of all the, you're in my thoughts, you're in my prayers. And they were all genuine. These people really were hurting for you.
They were.
And they wanted you to know it.
Yep.
So
they did awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing. It touched me. I know it touched you because it was for you.
I was very honored.
But now we're back to recording.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is something that you and I have done week in, week out for the last 3 years. We're coming up on our 3-year anniversary.
Yeah, it feels good, man.
I imagined it would.
Yeah.
For you to be back in your normal routine. It may be however many hours we're here in the studio, but this is normalcy.
And that's what I want.
And it's nice in these trying times to get back to normalcy.
Yeah, get my mind on other things.
So we had some new Patreon supporters, so let's just go ahead and give our shout outs.
Okay.
We had Matt East.
Hey, what's Roman West, though?
Well, I don't know. I think Matt East is better than his counterpart, Matt West. I got to be honest with you.
But I like the
Definitely
West.
better than Rex West.
Better Rex West. Come on now.
No.
You're hurting me.
Jordan Anusowitz.
Hey, Anusowitz.
Vanessa Mayo.
What's going on, mayonnaise?
Jennifer Lopes.
Hey, Jennifer.
Amanda Smith.
What's going on, Amanda?
Tracy Balbino jumped out at her highest level.
Balbino.
We had Melissa Lynn Poff.
Hey, Poff.
Adele Johanna.
Well, Johanna.
Rebecca Drew.
Hey, like Nancy Drew's sister?
It could be.
That'd be awesome.
Could be. And then we had a bunch of people jump out at our highest level. We had Charlene Payne.
Thanks, Charlene.
Sherry Bartlett.
Thanks, Sherry.
Young Locke.
Hey, Young, I appreciate that.
And Colleen Ellenbecker. All of those people jumped out at our highest level.
Ellenbecker stepping up again. Thank you, Ellenbecker.
Amanda Rousey.
Hey, Amanda.
Who, I'm just telling you right now, anybody with the last name Rousey,
yeah,
I just assume is a martial arts badass and somebody that you don't want to mess with.
Her sister did kick my ass that one time.
Yeah. That fight did not last long.
No, I thought I would do better.
I still have it on video. I've not released it just because it is incredibly embarrassing to you.
20 seconds is really fast.
Yeah. To be submitted, pinned, with your arm almost broken by Rhonda.
Not even mentioning all the tears that I
you cried.
Yeah.
We had Melissa Easley.
Hey, Melissa.
Debbie Abel.
Hey, Debbie.
Jessica Alahadzik.
Alahadzika.
Kara Slentz,
Hey, Kara.
Emily Sweat,
Thanks, Emily.
and Echo Kent.
What?
So a lot of great new support gives. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Shonda Shepard.
Hey, Shonda.
Been with us a long time, over 2 years now.
Wow, I appreciate that.
So we appreciate all the new Patreon support, the continued Patreon support. We also had some great PayPal donations as well. We had Alicia Little.
Hey, thanks, Alicia.
Miranda Huddleston.
Hey, Miranda.
Lori Peterson.
Thank you, Lori.
And Donna Weaver.
What's up, Donna?
So appreciate that. All right, Gibbs, we have an episode out right now on True Crime All the Time Unsolved. We are talking about 2 different cases from our home state of Ohio. The first is the 2010 disappearance of Nikki Lynn Forrest from Troy, Ohio, which is a little bit north of where I live, actually very close to where you live.
Very close.
And then we'll discuss the 2011 unsolved murder of Caitlin Markham of Fairfield, Ohio, which is south of us.
Which was really close to where I used to work.
Me as well. So make sure you check that out. We did not put out a Reviews Are In podcast last week, but make sure you check out that podcast. We'll have a new episode out on Tuesday.
We will.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
Let's do it.
We are talking about Paul Jennings Hill. And I think this is a little bit of a different type of case for us. We're headed to Pensacola, Florida. So we're in the Panhandle to talk about a man who, Gibbs, was so fervently against the idea of abortion that he was willing to kill to try to stop it. Now, abortion is a very touchy subject, as are a lot of subjects in today's society.
Right.
There are people on both sides of the aisle. I guess the thing for me was that I knew there had been a lot of incidents over the years, bombings of abortion clinics. I knew doctors had been killed.
Right.
But what I didn't realize until I really got deep down into the research is just exactly what people have gone through over the years related to this issue of abortion. I mean, you've got doctors who travel sometimes many miles from their home to come into these clinics to perform abortions, trying desperately to keep their anonymity. And then on the other side, you have protesters, you have anti-abortion activists who, some of them, are trying everything they can to find out the identity of these doctors. They're trying to find their personal information.
Well, you're definitely going to have the different sides, but then you're going to have the extreme variances on the different sides.
And I think that's a very important distinction to make. There's always people on both sides of the aisle. I think where you really get into trouble is when you have the extreme outliers, I guess I will call them, who are willing to do essentially anything for what they believe. And in this case, that involves murder. But there's something else that, for me, set this case apart from others that are like it. Paul Hill was once a minister, a pastor, a man of God. This is a guy that preached about, the sanctity of all life. So Paul Hill saw these abortions as taking a life. So obviously he was very pro-life, but at the same time, he chose to kill people. It's hard to kind of wrap your head around. Then at the end, the state ultimately took his life for the murders that he committed. So it's all kind of comes full circle.
I say it all just kind of encompasses around each other.
Yeah, it's something that we'll talk about as we go through. There's a lot going on in this case. And I mentioned it, right? Going to be people on different sides of the fence. You can bet on that. But you and I have talked about this before. We feel like we're here to tell the story. We're not taking a side one way or the other. We're presenting the facts of the case. And I did find an interview that Paul Hill did with a show called Life Talk before his execution. So I want to start out the show playing a clip from that interview.
The obvious question, hearkening back to 9 years ago, is why did you do it?
You ask why. Perhaps the most fundamental reason is the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder, also requires the means necessary to defend innocent people. And that's what I did, was I use the means necessary to defend innocent people. I compare my actions in my mind to the shootings at the Columbine High School. If I had killed one of the murderers there at the Columbine High School, people would not have objected to my actions because I would have been saving born children that were grown up. But the fact that the people I saved were unseen and the murderers that I killed were legalized murderers, people don't get the connection. But yeah, if someone were standing on a playground with a rifle shooting children on the playground, it would be your duty to come up and use the means necessary to stop him. And that's similar to what I did. I used the means necessary to restrain this abortionist. And I confess that the force I used was extraordinary. That was because the circumstances were extraordinary.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really helps to lay out the thoughts of Paul Hill, and we'll get into it more as we go through the episode. Now, some of his comparisons to Columbine and, playground shooters and things like that, they're kind of hard for me to reconcile because he even said it. He called it legalized murder. These abortions were legal.
Right.
Now, whether you agree that they should have taken place, that's different. But in the eyes of the law, they were legal. What he did was illegal. But to him, he had to do it. And we'll get into the trial and what he tries to offer up as his defense being a justifiable homicide. That's what he believes.
Yeah, I mean, we live in the United States.
Do we?
Well,
I wasn't sure because sometimes I think I'm not here.
well, you do have.
But you remind me.
You do have those other addresses.
I do.
But whatever country you live in, you reside there, and by residing there, you agree to follow the laws that have been written.
Some you agree with and some you do not.
And we all have that, right? There's many laws on the books that we shake our heads at. There's laws that we stand firm with. You have your beliefs, but at the end of the day, you have the laws of the state, of the country that we have to abide by. And that's tough for a lot of people.
Well, it was definitely tough for Paul Hill.
Yeah.
Let's start off talking about Paul. Paul Jennings Hill was born in Miami, Florida in 1954. This is not a big background case. We're not going to be talking a lot about his childhood. He did get into drugs as a kid. He was kind of a hellraiser. He was also extremely popular and played football in high school, very much like yourself, Gibbs.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least the hellraiser part.
Well, yeah.
I don't know about all the rest of that, but
Well, maybe. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
you were a little bit of a hellraiser, I assume.
A little bit.
Hill was outgoing. He dated a lot, as I imagine you did too. I didn't know you in high school, but
Well,
you're a little Casanova.
whatever we want to put out there, we'll just let people wonder.
Well, that's the thing about it. You can say whatever you want.
That's true.
Unless people that knew you in high school are listening and
They're
can
like,
refute that
yeah.
statement, it's going out there.
They're like, nah, he pretty much dated that one girl the whole time,
Or he pretty much stayed in his basement playing Dungeons and Dragons. That's all I remember of Mike Gibson.
Did I wear that hat out? I don't think I wore the dungeon hat out.
Paul Hill was charged with the assault of his father at the age of 17. So his father called police, said, my son assaulted me. There was a warrant put out for his arrest. This altercation allegedly occurred around his parents trying to get him help for his drug problem, which he didn't want help.
Right.
And a fight ensued.
Well, you normally don't want help when you don't think you have a problem.
For a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, the years go by. He's a little aimless for a couple of years. He's working a construction job. He's not sure what he wants to do with his life. And then very suddenly, he found God. And by the descriptions, I mean, it was very sudden.
And that happens. I've heard other stories like that.
Yeah, it happens for people where there is I don't know if you want to call it an aha moment. So from there, his life changed dramatically. He enrolled in seminary school and ultimately became a minister. He met his later-to-be wife while he was a senior at the seminary school. They went on to marry and have 3 children. Paul bounced around ministering at different places. They lived in South Carolina for a little bit. In the early 1990s, Paul and his family were living in Florida. And that's when he realized, probably almost as suddenly as it happened when he found God, that, you know what, this isn't for me. This is not my true calling to be a minister, to be a pastor. It wasn't for him. That would be tough, to completely devote your life for a period of time to this one very specific thing, right? You attended school to become a preacher, a pastor, a minister. I may use all those words interchangeably, and I'm not sure they are interchangeable, and then all of a sudden you realize, I don't like this, or this is not for me, however it went down.
Yeah, I think he was like, I'm glad I have God in my life, but I don't know if I can be the guy that has to make sure everybody else has God in their life.
Yeah, whatever it was, he decided it was time for a new line of work. He also wanted a change of venue. So Paul packed up the family and they moved to Pensacola, Florida in 1992. Paul bought one of those auto paint franchises. You know what I'm talking about, Gibbs?
Where you can get your car painted for cheap. That's what I always called them.
Well, I think they did the way it was described is they did a lot of things. They did some painting, but they also did like pinstriping, detailing.
Oh, like the tinted windows.
Yeah,
the
it was
truck
like
liners.
they did all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Small repairs. They would repair like vinyl seats and things like that. He did private work, but he also did a lot of work for the car dealerships in the area.
Oh, yeah. That's good business.
And that's what you want, right? You want to get some of those contracts. Now, I'm not exactly sure when Paul Hill got into this anti-abortion activism, but it really seemed to ramp up after a doctor named David Gunn was shot in an abortion clinic in 1993. My thought is, Gibbs, he was anti-abortion for a long time because of his religious beliefs, but he wasn't out picketing in front of clinics. You know, that really started after this doctor, who was known to perform abortions, was gunned down. That lit a fuse, for whatever reason, in Paul Hill to say, I've got to get more involved. I have to become an activist.
Yeah, I'm guessing whatever he heard when that happened rang true inside him about something. Like he thought, that's what needs to happen.
I think he was probably already having the thoughts.
Sure.
But this is what kind of galvanized it. And from there, he formed a group called Defensive Action. And apparently, Gibbs, this was a group of pastors, a group of church leaders that openly advocated the killing of doctors who performed abortions. I didn't even know this existed, to be honest with you.
I think it's really bizarre that people would come out publicly and promote that.
Add on top of that you have a bunch of church leaders, pastors, reverends, these type of people. But it was Paul Hill that kind of became the leader of the group, the spokesperson. He even appeared on some national TV broadcasts talking about his group and really not sugarcoating it at all. He came right out and said, this is what we stand for. This is what we believe in. And we're talking about CNN, Larry King, Nightline, The Phil Donahue Show. This is big time national television. And here's this guy, Paul Hill, on these big shows, basically talking about how all doctors who perform abortions should be killed. Man, if that doesn't raise some red flags, I don't know what does.
It's a big statement that would probably get you on the FBI radar for sure.
Take the abortion thing out of it. When you go on TV and say that any group of people should be killed, that is normally not looked at very kindly. There's got to be a whole FBI team scrambling to put a file together on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because like you said, take that equation out. Just saying that you want these people dead.
Any group of people.
Yeah, because you could say that about any group, that you don't believe in what they're doing, right?
And you have the ability to have that opinion.
Sure.
But when you take it to that next step and say, not only do I not agree with what these people are doing, I'm so against them that I think they should all be killed. That's rough.
Yeah. And on top of that, I'm going to promote it that I think you should help me kill them.
Exactly. So I want to talk about the clinic a little bit that's at the heart of this case. It was called the Ladies Center Clinic. It was located in Pensacola, Florida. I don't know whether it still exists, Gibbs. I don't think it does. I couldn't find any listing under that name. It could have changed names and it could still be operating, or it could be gone altogether. I really couldn't figure it out. But Paul Hill was a man known to demonstrate outside of the Ladies Center Clinic. He didn't live that far away, about 10 minutes away from the clinic. He was there a lot. I mean, almost like a daily basis. And he carried signs that read things like execute murderers, abortionists, accessories. He also carried a sign that read disobey unjust laws. Hill was arrested on June 16th, 1994 for shouting outside of the Ladies Center Clinic. He was sentenced to 45 days in jail for violating the city's noise ordinance.
Well, I'm guessing the city put this ordinance in play when they got complaints from people around there with all the protesting, good or bad, right? Because you're going to have protesters from both sides.
Sure.
You know,
and you're going to have some very peaceful protesters.
Sure.
I don't want to paint protesters in a bad light.
No.
Now, Paul Hill's going to give them all a bad name.
Yeah.
But they're not all to the extreme that this guy was.
But owning a business next door or in the same building as that place, the last thing you want is to have to hear that all day long or have to navigate around or through or whatever. So I can see them reaching business owners saying, hey, Pensacola,
help us out here.
You got to put something. You
Well,
got to quiet this down.
This is how far the protesters went. They actually got together. I think it was one guy, but he bought the parcel of land right next to this clinic so that nobody could really stop them.
Right.
He owned it. They could come and be on the lawn right next door to this clinic and pretty much do whatever they wanted. Now, the noise ordinance, like you said, was probably something that it was on the books, but they probably enforced it because of this.
Yeah. Buy whatever property you want to buy and do what you want to do on it. Just
keep it down.
Keep it down.
So you think about these signs and you say, wow, that's pretty scary stuff. You're advocating that certain people should be killed. But I think Paul Hill was just one of many. Like I said, there were a lot of people that demonstrated. There were a lot of people that carried signs that had these types of slogans on them. The difference between Paul Hill and other demonstrators is that Paul Hill's going to take action. He's going to make the decision that the only way to stop these abortions is to kill the people who are carrying them out.
Hey, look, we have the right to assemble.
Sure.
Right? We have the right to protest. We just don't have the right to break a law. And that's like you said, that's where he's going to go.
Well, he's going to break a bunch of laws.
Yeah.
So the man carrying out the abortions at the clinic was a 69-year-old doctor named John Britton. Britton lived about 6-7 hours away in Fernandina, Florida. I never heard of Fernandina. But it was said, Gibbs, that he would most of the time drive into the Pensacola clinic on Fridays to perform abortions. Sometimes he would fly, but most of the time I think he drove in. That's not a short drive. 6-7 hours. Kiss your wife goodbye. Say, honey, I'm leaving Thursday night or I'm leaving early Friday morning to get there. But this is where, everything kind of comes together because Britton had taken the place of Dr. David Gunn. This is the guy that I talked about who had been shot 3 times in the back and killed as he was walking up to a clinic in 1993. This is just a year before the incident that we're going to cover. It's also, like I said, what I think really sparked Paul Hill into that level of extremism. So you think about that, Gibbs. This Dr. Britton, at one point, he had to get a call asking if he would take the place of a man who was shot to death outside of the type of place that he was being asked to come and do that same work at.
Yeah, this is a decision that you wouldn't take lightly.
No, there's no way. Number one, do you even want to go do this at all? And then, secondly, do you want to go do it in the wake of the guy that previously performed the abortions being killed, and knowing that this area is kind of a hotbed for anti-abortion activists?
Yeah, I would say tempers are kind of on the high level.
Very high. But in the end, he decided that he would do it. John Britton had been performing abortions since 1973. That's when Roe v. Wade came out. That's made abortions legal. John Britton sat down for an interview with a Tampa Bay Times reporter named Laura Griffin. And in the interview, he said that he personally was opposed to abortion. He disliked the procedure. He didn't believe in it. I think he went as far, Gibbs, as to say he wouldn't do it for anyone in his family, and he didn't want anyone in his family to have it done. But he was willing to do it for others. And he talked about some of the reasons why, some of the horrific situations that he had seen over the years. He mentioned 11-year-old girls, rape victims, young victims of incest, right? So he's giving examples of very young girls getting pregnant through the commission of essentially what are crimes against these young girls. So this man, John Britton, was a family doctor on the other side of Florida. He was very opposed to abortions, yet he made the decision that he was willing to give up his time, get up early, like I said, leave his wife, go to Pensacola on Fridays to perform this service. There are some seriously odd things about this case, right? You have a perpetrator that is so pro-life that he's willing to kill. I mean, just break down that sentence. The guy is so pro-life,
right,
that he's willing to kill. You have a doctor who doesn't believe in abortion, but is willing to perform them as a service for girls/women in need.
So in a sense, you have two individuals doing things that they don't believe in.
Seem to go against their beliefs. And Britton, he knew the risks. We mentioned them, right? His predecessor had been gunned down the year before. He knew there was a great deal of risk in doing what he was doing. So when he drove to Pensacola, one article said, like I mentioned, sometimes he would fly in, but when he got near Pensacola on the days that he would drive, he stopped on the outskirts and he would change out his license plate to try to keep people from, getting his identification, getting his personal information.
Didn't want them to be able to figure out where he lived. And
right.
Yeah.
Now, when he flew, he had people pick him up, drive him in, try to, sneak into this clinic. Escorts is what they called them, right? He had people that would pick him up, escort him into the clinic. These were the same people that escorted the women in to try to shield them from all these protesters. The clinic had an off-duty armed police officer that sat inside the front door. So John Britton did his best to shield his identity, but there was no way around it. There were so many anti-abortion protesters, and they were smart. They began tailing him. They eventually figured out who he was. They took pictures of him. They put him on flyers, Gibbs. They put his home number on the flyers, and they plastered him up all over town. So didn't take long before he's back at his home in Fernandina getting harassing phone calls, threatening letters, and packages started showing up on his front doorstep. That's a bad situation.
Something hard to hide from. I'm sure he got some interesting looks and stares when he went in town, did his shopping or whatever. I'm sure if people knew what he was doing.
All right, Gibbs, let's take a break to talk about our sponsor, Rocket Mortgage. Home is so much more than just a house. It's your little slice of heaven. So that's why when you find the perfect place for you and your family, getting a mortgage shouldn't get in the way. Finding the right house isn't easy, but finding the right mortgage can be. Rocket Mortgage is doing more to help you understand the home buying process so you can get exactly what you need. Because it's not just a mortgage, it's your mortgage. And they found a better way. They have a team of experts experts whose number one goal is to make the home buying process smoother for you. They have industry-leading online lending technology developed in the heart of Detroit, Michigan. They make the home buying process work for you. Rocket Mortgage is there with award-winning client service and support every step of the way. Their team really cares about getting you home. So visit rocketmortgage.com/TCAT and take the first step toward the home of your dreams. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS Consumer Access.org number 3030. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Push button, get mortgage. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. It was on July 27th, 1994, that Paul Hill went into a Pensacola gun shop. He bought a Mossberg pump shotgun. He left the gun shop, went to another store, and bought 6 boxes of double-aught buckshot shotgun shells. Then he went to the gun range. Gibbs, he tested out this shotgun. The next day, he went back to the gun range to do some more testing. There's no doubt at this point in time in the mind of Paul Hill as to what he's going to do. He has the gun. He has the ammo. He's been to the range twice to make sure that he knows how the gun works. He's going to kill John Britton. And he got up early the next day on the 29th with that goal in mind.
Very determined.
Oh, I think at that point, in his mind, there was nothing that was going to stand in his way. The decision was made. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So he gets the gun. He practices with it. He's good with it. He feels comfortable with it, clearly, at this point. And I'm assuming he knows where he needs to stand with this shotgun to make sure that he hits his target.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up. There really wasn't much in the way of the research about what he was doing at the gun range. But for those people that don't know, shooting a shotgun is somewhat different than shooting, a rifle or a semi-automatic handgun or even a revolver for that matter. There's a pattern to the shot that comes out from a shotgun shell. That pattern changes the closer or farther away you are from whatever it is you're shooting at. So he's up early on the 29th. The 29th is a Friday, and Paul Hill knew that Dr. Britton was going to be at the clinic that morning. He was up early so he could get to the clinic to wait on the doctor. He was seen by a number of people, many of whom would later testify at his trial. There was a police officer that said he encountered Paul Hill early that morning. Hill was putting out little white crosses in the yard by the clinic. The police officer told him that he couldn't do it. There was an ordinance against that. He made Hill remove the crosses. A woman named Kathleen Mealing later testified at Hill's trial that she saw him standing by the fence at the clinic. So no doubt, it was very obvious. Now, after the fact,
right,
obvious that Paul Hill was awaiting the arrival of Dr. John Britton. While Paul was waiting, Dr. Britton was being picked up at the Pensacola Regional Airport by his escorts for the day. He had two, 74-year-old James Barrett and his 68-year-old wife, June. James was a retired U.S. Air Force lieutenant colonel. Gibbs, this guy served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Wow. That's impressive.
He spent in total 28 years in the military and served in those 3 wars. June was a retired U.S. Public Health Service captain. These people were accomplished. They had led very interesting lives. Now, they were both widowed, and they found each other late in life in Annapolis, Maryland. James was 69 at the time, and June was 63 when they met. They married just a year later in 1990. They moved to Pensacola in 1992, which just happened to be the same year that Paul Hill came to town with his family. But the Barretts volunteered their time as escorts at the clinic. And I mentioned some of what they did. Most of the time they escorted women into the clinic, trying their best to shield them from the protesters. Sometimes, as they did this morning that we're talking about, they picked up the doctor at the airport when he chose to fly in rather than drive.
Sure.
So it was said that Dr. Britton was wearing a bulletproof vest that morning as he rode in the passenger seat of the Barrett's pickup truck to the clinic. That should tell you something. You don't wear a bulletproof vest to work unless you know there's a chance somebody's going to take a pot shot at you. Do you wear a bulletproof vest to go into your place of employment?
No.
That's a negative. You know why? Because you're not worried about it.
No.
John Britton was very worried about it, and he should have been. There's protesters every day. His predecessor was shot to death. As James Barrett pulled his truck into the clinic driveway, they saw Paul Hill. He was standing in the middle of the driveway, blocking it. They knew who Paul Hill was. He was well known to everyone at the clinic. They had interacted with this guy in some form or fashion on almost a daily basis for the last year or year and a half. So Hill is blocking the driveway. Barrett is not able to pull his truck all the way in. He stopped the truck and began to open the door. This is when Paul Hill picked up this Mossberg shotgun and started firing off shots. James Barrett was shot and killed. He fell to the ground. Dr. Britton and June Barrett were still in the truck when the shots were fired. Britton was hit and killed. June Barrett later described seeing blood on the doctor's head. She also described Gibbs seeing blood dripping from in between the front seats of the truck. Very descriptive. Horrible situation. June was hit herself in the arm and in the breast, but she was in the back seat, which I'm sure helped. She also managed to get down on the floor of the truck in the back seat, which would have helped immensely.
Yeah.
Of the 3, June was the only one that survived. A fireman who arrived at the scene later and helped June out of the truck later testified at Hill's trial that June said, quote, "Paul Hill, that's the crazy son of a bitch who did this." Because, again, Paul Hill was no stranger. Everybody at that clinic knew who he was by sight. He was a pain in their ass.
Well, and he's made it very clear what his intentions have always been.
Sure. So after Paul Hill finished shooting, he had killed James Barrett. He had killed the doctor. He dropped the shotgun and essentially began sauntering down the sidewalk as if he had completed his mission.
So he's just having his little, kind of like a proud moment. Like I did what I wanted to do. I conquered and just kind of, that's it, and walking away.
Yeah. He wasn't trying to get away. He was just walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
There were some people that heard the shots. They saw him walking away. They chased after him. One eyewitness said that as he was walking down, he just had his arms up in the air, palms facing up, almost as if he was, I don't know, reaching out to God or something.
Right. Saying I did what I needed to do.
But he was just walking. It wasn't like he was, trying to run away from anybody. So these guys are chasing him down the sidewalk. They're also waving to police, as police get on the scene. And they got there very quickly because they encountered Paul Hill on the street. One report said that one of the officers who was there was the same guy who saw him earlier that morning and asked him to remove the crosses from the lawn. So they handcuffed Paul and they searched him. They found 2 shotgun shell holders, one on each of his ankles. They found shotgun shells in his shirt pocket, and they found a box of shells in his back pants pocket. And as the police walked him to the squad car, he said, quote, "I know one thing. No innocent babies are going to be killed in that clinic today." So again, he's not trying to hide what he did.
No. I was wondering how he felt, I mean, that says everything how he felt. But initially I was wondering, how did somebody that takes a firm oath being pro-life just took his first life?
Yeah, as far as we know, and by all indications, I don't believe he had killed before.
Right.
Well, I think you heard it in the clip a little bit too. I think he was totally fine with it. I don't think he was wrestling in his mind with what he had just done. He had made the decision that this was the right thing to do. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but he will later say that he was told by God, this is what I want you to do. So I feel like he probably felt like he was all right with the world.
Yeah.
And with God. So Gibbs, this is not going to be one of those cases where police have to break down Paul Hill. They know he did it. He's eager to admit that he did it. So they're investigating the crime scene. Police found the shotgun. They found the spent shells that were fired. Eventually, they would lift Paul Hill's fingerprints from the shotgun, as well as one of the spent shotgun shells that was still inside the gun. Pretty good evidence.
Pretty good.
Plus, you have him saying, yeah, I did this. It's pretty good, too.
It kind of locks it up.
On August 9th, 1994, a grand jury indicted Paul Hill for the premeditated murders of John Britton and James Barrett, as well as the attempted murder of June. He was also indicted on one charge of shooting into an occupied vehicle. I actually have never heard of that charge before. Hill was held without bond in the Escambia County Jail. But here's the thing, and I found this extremely interesting. This was a state charge, right? The grand jury brought back. Paul was also charged federally for violating a federal law that made it illegal to block access to an abortion clinic. So you had the federal charges, which carried a maximum of life in prison, and then you had the state charges, which could result in the death penalty. He went on trial for the federal charges first. Took the jury about 2.5 hours to find him guilty, but this was unprecedented, this federal trial, because Paul Hill was the first person to be convicted under this new federal law. It had just been passed earlier in the year. It was called the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Law, or FACE for short. Paul's state trial began on October 31st, 1994. And in a move, Gibbs, that I know you always have an opinion on, Hill requested to represent himself. Seems like something he would do.
Yeah.
And he did.
And I think probably more so to continue to put his message out. I think he knew where this was all going to go legally wise, but I think he probably wanted to use that opportunity to
be the voice, right? So if you're representing yourself, you get to talk more.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He's not getting out of this. I think he was probably smart enough to know that. So I agree with you. But they had a hearing and the judge allowed him to represent himself. But he also appointed an attorney from the public defender's office to act as what he called standby counsel, right? To help him out if he needed help. He's going to need a lot of help.
Oh, I would think so.
Because most people do. And we'll get into it a little bit more.
And I am surprised that they allowed him to represent himself because it was a death penalty.
Yeah, the prosecution is going for death. But I guess the judge said, hey, that's your right. If you want to do it.
We asked you. You waived it.
More power to you.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out well for you, but I'll let you do it. So Hill filed some motions. One was reported as being 70 pages long.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It could have been complete gibberish for all I know, but he asked for an out-of-state attorney to be his standby counsel. That request was denied. I think it was denied because the attorney wasn't licensed to practice law in the state of Florida.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. Hill pleaded not guilty to all charges. And we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about this trial, but one of the big questions about it was whether or not the judge would allow Paul Hill's defense. And Hill's defense was going to be that the murders he committed were acts of justifiable homicide. Now, the judge ultimately ruled against the motion to use this justifiable homicide defense, but I want to talk about it a little bit because it's very interesting. When you think justifiable homicide, I think most people probably think about a person who kills someone that they believe is about ready to kill them.
Right.
You know, self-defense, justifiable homicide. Somebody breaks into your house, they have a gun, you have a gun, you kill them. That's kind of the boilerplate version to me of what I think of as justifiable homicide. That person should not go to jail. This guy was trying to kill him.
Right.
And he stopped him or kill his family. But it can be used in other situations, like where a person kills someone in the act of defending someone else, right? Let's say a total stranger, a third party, you're out somewhere, you happen to be carrying. There's a robbery about ready to go on, somebody's shooting, you shoot the perpetrator.
Right.
Well, you saved these people that were in harm's way. You can use the justifiable homicide defense. So that's how Paul Hill saw it. You heard it in the clip. To him, he was protecting these unborn babies from harm, and therefore he was justifiable in his actions. But he wasn't allowed to use that defense. So without that defense, he was pretty much left with nothing because the evidence against Paul Hill was pretty overwhelming. You know, the prosecutor came out and said that at the very least, Paul Hill planned the murders 2 days in advance. I think that's pretty obvious, right? From the timeline of the gun purchase. But he also said that he could have been planning it for as long as 6 months. There were a number of eyewitnesses to the shooting that testified at the trial. A man named Earl Jackson said he saw Paul Hill pick up a shotgun by the clinic's fence and start firing. A woman named Elizabeth Pinch was in a nearby parking lot, said that she saw Paul Hill firing the shotgun. We mentioned a woman named Kathleen Mealing. She testified that she also saw Paul shooting the gun. There were a bunch of other people that either saw him shooting or they didn't see him shooting, but they heard the shots and they saw him walking away from the scene.
So plenty of eyewitnesses.
Tons. Yeah.
And just general witnesses, yeah.
Well, and let's not forget the fingerprints on the gun, the fact that it wasn't like he said, why are you arresting me? I didn't do this. You know, that's not how it went down.
Right.
A firearms expert testified that the shells found at the scene were fired from the Mossberg shotgun that had Paul Hill's fingerprints on it. The guy said that the gun held 8 shotgun shells. There were a total of 11 shots fired, which means that at some point, Paul Hill had to reload. The firearms expert also testified that from the way the pellets entered the truck, it was apparent that Hill at some point had changed his firing position at least one time. So it wasn't like he stood in the same place and fired all 11 shots. He fired some shots. He might have moved as he was reloading, and then he fired more.
So he's very tactical about it.
He was.
Yeah.
He was. Again, I think he had been planning this for some time. And then you had the medical examiner who testified to the injuries sustained by the victims. These were brutal. James Barrett was struck in the head, the chest, the arm, and the abdomen. Dr. Britton was hit 6 times in the head, face, chest. He was also hit in the arm. These caused catastrophic damage. Britton's skull was fractured, causing massive trauma to the brain. This shot to his arm, they said it blew a gaping hole in his arm, and it shattered his humerus bone. It's gruesome stuff.
Oh, for sure, man. These shotgun blasts will do some major damage.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Gunshot wounds are nasty. But when you get hit by a shotgun at fairly close range, it can really cause major damage because you have a large number of pellets, projectiles coming out of this shell, and they are just ripping through things.
I think it's good that the prosecutor's laying all this out, even though we know that he admits doing this. But I think you have to lay it all out. You have to get technical with it because death penalty, that there's going to most likely be some appeals coming down the pike.
Oh, well, there always is, right? There's
Right.
automatic appeals anytime there's a death penalty case. And you're right. I mean, the prosecution just can't go in and say, well, he admitted it.
Right.
So find him guilty and we'll move on. They still have to lay out all of the evidence. But I think the biggest witness for the prosecution was June, right? June Barrett was there. She was in the middle of the firefight. She saw it. So I would think, Gibbs, that is pretty compelling testimony for a jury. You have the experts. That's one thing, right? They're laying out all of this scientific type evidence. But when June Barrett gets on the stand and says, Paul Hill was standing in the driveway firing at us. He killed my husband. He killed the doctor. He shot me.
Right.
And she's saying, I witnessed this blood dripping. I mean, it's very compelling testimony.
Yeah. It's basically putting the jurors in the truck with her. You're sitting there when you're hearing all that.
So I mentioned that Paul was acting as his own counsel. What I found extremely fascinating was that it was reported that he didn't cross-examine any of the witnesses. He also didn't have an opening statement or what appeared, Gibbs, to be any kind of strategy at all. He was just there.
Well, like I said, I think he was there
as a mouthpiece
Yes.
for what he believed in.
Right.
Now, he was barred, as we mentioned, from using his justifiable homicide defense, which really was probably the only slim chance in hell he had of getting out of this. So I guess at some point he just thought, well, what else am I going to do?
Right.
I'm no Perry Mason.
There was going to be no Madlock last minute.
Yeah, I'm not Perry Mason. I'm not Madlock. Well, no, you're not. And neither are all the other people that try to represent themselves. That's why it's a really bad idea.
Yeah. Worst thing you could ever do.
Once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like their 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. My wife and I do a lot of shopping online, and we always use Rakuten. Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. We're talking fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Macy's, Nike, Sephora, Dyson, and Lowe's. And that's just to name a few. Pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cashback. Cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or Rakuten can send you a check. You can even maximize your savings by stacking cash back on top of other deals, like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It really is a no-brainer. Membership is free, and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's RAKUTEN. Your cash back really adds up. The trial didn't last long. It was over by November 2nd. So we're talking about a 3-day trial, maybe not even 3 full days. The jury came back and convicted Paul Hill on all counts. It took this jury, Gibbs, about 20 minutes of deliberation to reach their verdict. That should tell you something.
Definitely a slam dunk for the prosecution.
That's what I was going to say. When we talk about slam dunks, this was a slam dunk. I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that a lot of juries take longer than 20 minutes, even if they take their first vote and it all comes back guilty.
Yeah.
Just because they don't want to look like they rushed through it. I mean, 20 minutes, it takes 5 minutes just for everybody to get in their seat.
Yeah, I just don't think there was any roadblocks put up for the jurors.
Well,
there was no...
Because you had no defense attorney
Right.
to try to cast even a shadow of a doubt on anything that was said during the trial. If you're not cross-examining witnesses, you can probably also make the assumption that you're not objecting to a lot of things. The prosecution is probably getting most of everything they want through, right, to the jury.
Right.
Pretty tough.
I mean, the jurors are sitting there. Maybe he thought, well, maybe these jurors will see it the way I see it and see it beyond the state or federal law and see it as a larger thing. But they're sitting there as jurors for the law that is written. And that's how they are going to have to act.
Well, not to mention the fact that these jurors would have been questioned during voir dire.
Yes.
So both sides would have known what their feelings are. And anybody that probably felt, if there was a slim chance that anybody felt as extreme about this as Paul Hill did, I'm sure there were plenty of people that were against abortion.
Sure.
But that's not the question. The question is, would you be willing to kill? Do you think it's okay to kill people that provide these abortion services? And anybody that even came close to saying that, gone.
Yeah, they
struck.
Sure.
Now, I will say this. Paul Hill had quite a number of supporters during the trial. The police presence was also extremely intense. I guess they had the SWAT team on rooftops scattered around. They had snipers. They weren't taking any chances, Gibbs, that this thing was going to get out of hand. The next day during the penalty phase, the jury recommended death. And it was on December 6th that the judge sentenced Hill to death. In handing down his sentence, the judge said that he factored in 3 aggravating circumstances. Number 1, the homicides had been committed by a person with previous convictions of violent crimes. The homicides were especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. And number 3, the homicides had been calculated and premeditated. After the conviction, a priest with this affirmative defense group, right, that was kind of started up by Paul Hill, held a press conference. He stated that Paul Hill was motivated directly by God. He also said that there will come a time when abortionists will be killed on a daily basis. This guy is saying this in front of the entire media. Again, not hiding at all the fact that these people believe so strongly that abortion is wrong, they're willing to kill anybody involved with it. Now, you also had a large number of pro-life people coming out and denouncing the violent acts of Paul Hill. They were pissed that they were being painted in the same light as Paul Hill, right? These are people that were very pro-life, but they were peaceful protesters. They were trying to get their message across. They weren't willing to kill anybody for it, though. But as often happens, right, when you're aligned with the same group as someone that goes out and does something like this,
guilty by association.
yeah, you kind of get painted that way. And these people were ticked. They had to come out and say, hey, we don't believe in it, but
that's not our message.
We're not willing to go the route that Paul Hill did. One reverend came out and said, if you are pro-life, there are some things you cannot do. And one of those is take a human life. That makes a lot of sense to me. So you essentially had two different types of anti-abortion activists. You had some that believed in what Paul Hill did and were all for stopping abortion through any means necessary. That was one group. Then you had those that were totally against abortion, but they were only willing to try to end it through nonviolent means. I think that was the majority, right? This Paul Hill group was the minority. But what's interesting, Gibbs, is that you have religious people in both groups, right? You have reverends, pastors that came out and said, yeah, these people should be killed. Then you have other people of God saying, how can you say that? You can't take anyone's life. I think it's all of this is what really drew me to this case. So Paul went to prison, obviously, right? Sitting on death row. Paul Hill's execution day was set for September 3rd, 2003. His last meal, Gibbs, was steak, a baked potato, broccoli, salad, orange sherbet, and unsweetened iced tea. Now, don't go too crazy and get sweet tea.
I know. I was like,
or sweetened iced tea.
At this point, does it really matter if it's sweetened or not? You know,
no, there's no need to watch your waistline at this point because, you know, the next day you're going to die. And I'm not making a joke about that. It's just, I find it strange. And maybe this guy just really liked unsweetened iced tea.
And I would probably put the broccoli on the side.
Oh, I'm fine with the steak. All of the rest of it, no. I don't even like to eat broccoli at home. And my wife tries to melt some cheese on it to, you know, make it more palatable, but
never works for me.
It doesn't work for me either.
No.
I still eat it because she wants me to and to be healthy, but I eat salads too, but it's not what I'm not going to be craving a salad.
No. I want like lasagna, man. That'd be my last. Something like that. Something big and hearty and would take me a long time to eat it. Like,
you're always about the how long.
Yeah.
You know, this is like, they're not waiting on you to finish for the execution to happen.
I'm sorry, man. I'm still eating.
You're not going to be able to drag this out over the night and into the next day.
I got a big tray of lasagna here. It's going to take some time.
Paul Hill also got a chance to meet with reporters the day before, where he told them that he was sure that he would be rewarded in heaven for his actions. He never wavered in this. The talk about, you know, how he was following God's instructions when he committed these murders. He also said that he felt no remorse whatsoever for what he had done. That was something that never changed.
Yeah.
He believed until the day he died that the murders he committed were justified.
He was very devoted to his cause.
Yes. But he didn't stop there. You know, during this interview, he called on others to do what he had done, right? To use whatever force necessary to stop abortion. So you can imagine the prison system was on high alert for this execution. It was reported that the security force for Paul Hill's execution was the biggest since Ted Bundy.
Wow.
So that's saying something.
That is saying something.
And I think, Gibbs, they had pretty good reason to worry. You know, there were anti-abortion websites, forums, people on the internet that were causing them quite a bit of concern. People were posting maps to the prison where the execution was set to take place. There was a lot of violent rhetoric floating around, especially on the internet, about trying to disrupt this execution. A lot of people, and I shouldn't say a lot, a minority of people saw Paul Hill as a kind of a hero figure.
Sure, I can see why they would, you know, depending on where they stand with their own beliefs.
Yes.
Sure, makes sense.
I mean, to you and I, we wouldn't see, and most people listening wouldn't see him as a hero.
Right.
But to that small minority of people who believed in that type of extremism, they held him up there in very high regard for what he had done. In the end, there were about 60 protesters that showed up with signs. There were obviously protesters on the other side too, right, that were more than happy to see Paul Hill die. But in the end, nothing violent happened. It was essentially pretty peaceful. People held prayer vigils. They had their signs, but that was the extent of the demonstrations. It wasn't like the two sides clashed and there was this big war,
Right.
or Paul Hill's side of it tried to storm the gates or disrupt the execution. Now, it was said that there were about 100 police officers there, so that show of force.
Might have parked some of those thoughts about storming the castle.
Yeah, have fun storming the castle. But 60 versus 100, that's probably going to thwart anything that you have planned.
Yeah, probably didn't want any plastic bullets coming at them that day.
If they were plastic.
Well, that's true back then.
We don't know.
Yeah.
I have a theory that probably not all of them, if any of them, were plastic.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to try to rush a prison, you're going to get shot with real bullets.
Right.
So let's talk about last words. Paul Hill's final words were, "The last thing I want to say, if you believe abortion is a lethal force, you should oppose the force and do what you have to do to stop it. May God help you to protect the unborn as you would want to be protected." Paul Hill was the first person executed for taking the life of an abortion provider. So this guy kind of holds a couple of distinctions, for a lack of a better word. He's the first guy to be executed for killing an abortion provider. He was the first guy convicted under this, what was then a new face law.
Right.
About blocking the entrances to abortion clinics. But in the end, Gibbs, as we kind of wrap up this episode, this one is very hard for me to get my head around. I get the protests. I get voicing your opinion on a subject. I get the fact that people are on both sides of this issue. There are some people that believe taking any life is wrong. But then how can someone turn around and say, taking any life is wrong, but it's okay for me to kill these doctors because I'm doing it for the cause, as Paul Hill believed. And again, don't get me wrong. I think it's a very small minority of people that believe what he believed to that extent that
Sure.
all these people should be killed. But you heard Paul Hill. He truly believed in what he was doing, and he thought that it was just.
Well, and you're never going to change that person's mind, I mean, that's where he was. That's where his whole belief system laid.
The other thing that I was really shocked by in researching this episode is just how many clergymen were of this same mindset. There were a lot of people that, had given their life to God. Now, I get why they don't believe in abortion. I get that from the religious aspect of it. But to come out and say that these doctors should be killed as a religious leader, as a minister, as a pastor, as whatever word you want to use, I just found that very odd, in total opposition to what I would have thought a religious leader would say. And maybe I'm being naive. I don't know. And again, small minority. I know. That's where we get into the how do you make sense, right? How do you make sense of some of these people and their thoughts, because they're so extreme.
Yeah, it's just, and I know it's touchy, man.
It's a touchy subject. And
I mean,
I'm sure somebody's going to get ticked off just about the fact that we're even talking about abortion. Yeah. But to me, this is is an extremely fascinating case, and I feel like it deserves to be told. And it's, you can't shy away from every touchy subject, or else what do you got to talk about?
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean,
I think Gibbs, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I think for most people, no matter which side you come down on the abortion issue, it's hard to side with Paul Hill. It's hard to wrap your mind around how he could think it was okay or justifiable to do this.
Sure.
Even if you're against abortion in all forms, how can you justify taking someone else's life?
Yeah.
In the pursuit of trying to stop abortion? It doesn't make sense to me.
On that day, he was willing to take 3 lives. He took 2.
He took 2. He set out, really, I think he set out to kill the doctor, but the doctor had escorts with him, and he knew that. It wasn't like it stopped him from pumping the shotgun and firing all those shots. There could have been 10 people
Yeah.
I think he was going to do it regardless.
To get to the one person.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, because in his mind, he was thinking, I have to kill the doctor.
Right.
Because the doctor is the one that is performing the abortions.
Right.
But what you're saying is he was willing to kill whoever else he had to as well.
To get to the doctor.
So you got to wrap your head around that too. How's he making that okay in his mind?
Exactly.
I don't know that he ever really talked about that. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about James and June Barrett. These were amazing people. They had amazing lives.
Sure.
They were volunteering their time for something that people may or may not believe in, but they did. And they were willing to, give up their time for it. It's just a tough case all around.
Yeah. It's one of the ones that's going to have you talking.
Thinking a little bit for sure. But that's it. That's the case of Paul Hill. Kind of went down a strange road, right? From Hellraiser to minister.
Yeah.
To auto body paint. Franchisee. To getting into this really extreme anti-abortion activism, and then making the decision that, yeah, I'm okay. God's okay with it for me to kill this doctor. We got some voicemails.
Let's hear them.
You can check those out.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is Taylor from Michigan, and I just wanted to say that you guys have the best true crime podcast I've ever found. I've always loved true crime, and I work night shift at a school, and I have extreme paranoia. And most true crime stories are just very eerie and very unsettling. And you guys are able to put humor into it, which makes it more enjoyable for me to get through the night. And I work in a pretty sketchy neighborhood, so, I always get nervous. But you guys make me feel a lot safer and very entertained during the night. Keep doing what you're doing, and bye.
All right, Taylor, we appreciate that.
Yes, awesome. Glad that we can give you that comfort.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. My name is Chris. I live in Utah. Love the show. I'm a truck driver, so you keep me driving down the road. Keep me awake. You're both funny. I love the banter between the two of you. But, Mike, I got to say, as much grief as you give Gibby about his mispronunciations and stuff, I was listening to the latest episode about the 300-pound woman that jumped on the guy's back, and I heard you call her a corn artist, and nobody said anything to you. Poor old Gibbs, man, he sure gets it. But I think he sometimes does that stuff just to get a laugh, too. Keep it up, Gibbs, and love you, Mike Berge, and keep up the good work. Thank you. Oh, keep your own time ticking.
Oh, I wish I did it for a laugh.
Yeah. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's real and what's not. What I will say to that, and I don't remember, I don't remember hearing that when I went back and edited, but it's very possible. I make mistakes all the time. What I keep saying, Gibbs, is that you're supposed to catch me.
I know.
But sometimes I'm not sure you're listening to me.
Might be.
I look over, you're tweeting or you're on your phone, and you're supposed to be the gatekeeper that catches me when I say something, and then you're supposed to give me a hard time about it. Because you don't, it makes it seem like I'm picking on you all the time.
Or maybe I thought you were saying it right.
That's supposed to be our banter back in. Yeah, you probably heard it and be like, yeah, that's totally right.
That sounds good. Yeah, that's probably how you pronounce that.
That's funny.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Ruby from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I just started watching your guys' podcast, very, very recently. I actually discovered you guys through the Reviews Are In podcast, and I heard you mention a few times that you guys did stuff involving true crime, and I was very curious to see how you guys, when you seem just so, silly and lighthearted, how you would deal with such, heavy topics. And I was honestly surprised just to see how well you guys balance your light humor with the seriousness of these crimes that you cover, and how you actually give respect to the victims. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all this hard work you guys do. So, cool. I know you've got those cute little things at the end, but I don't know them yet, so take care.
Wow, Gibbs, I really appreciate that, and that's a first.
Yeah.
Most people tune in to the Reviews Are In podcast, our new podcast,
Right.
because they know us from True Crime All the Time or True Crime All the Time Unsolved.
Right.
That's the first person I've ever heard that found the Reviews Are In podcast and then came over and started listening to True Crime. So
Like that.
it's very cool. But we appreciate the kudos.
Hey guys, this is Eileen from Cincinnati. I was just calling to say that I love your shows. I love the extra content that I get from Patreon. I love hearing your relationship on TCAT Unsolved, and I am a big fan of the Reviews Are In. When I listen to you guys, I feel like I'm hanging out with some of my friends or maybe two cool older uncles, which is why I wanted to call and say thank you and to give a message to Gibby and tell him that I'm so sorry to hear about the loss of his father and to let him know that family comes first, jobs come second, and to always keep that in mind in times like these, and just let him know that the whole TCAT community and family is thinking of you. Thanks again, guys.
That's cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, what I will say, Gibbs, is there was a lot of voicemails of people saying something similar to you, and I had to pick and choose, right? Couldn't play all of them, but there was a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of support and from the TCAT Nation, and it was amazing.
Definitely appreciate it.
So we had mailbag. Jenna Watts sent me a very cool Kentucky Wildcats Tervis tumbler.
Really?
Which I love those.
Yeah, you do.
And she sent you a holiday ornament that is a bowl of popcorn that has the words movie buff on it.
Oh, okay.
Because you're such a movie buff.
Yeah, that's cool.
And she referenced the fact that you are a movie buff, even though you can't really remember all of the particulars.
But I'm really good at it.
You are good at it.
Yeah.
And then our friends at Nefarious New York sent a little man to you that they made out of Twizzler packages.
I think it's supposed to be a woman.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't really look at it that closely because I knew it was for you.
There was no little Twizzler hanging in between the two legs.
No, there was no little Twizzler. But I didn't know that there would be or not be.
Yeah.
I didn't know that would denote man or woman.
They made me a Twizzler woman.
Yeah. It was very imaginative. I mean, I guess we should explain it. It's not made out of Twizzlers. It's made out of Twizzler packages.
Yes.
So like the arms are little packages of Twizzlers.
Yeah.
The legs are, and then there's a body. And
They did a good job.
yeah, no, it was cool.
Yeah.
All right, buddy, we got to get out.
All right.
So that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
At the turn of the 20th century, rapid industrialization, urbanization, and political corruption were ravaging America. But soon, President Theodore Roosevelt and a diverse group of reformers known as progressives would fight back. Hi, I'm Lindsey Graham, the host of Wondery's podcast, American History Tellers. We take you to the events, times, and people that shaped America and Americans, our values, our struggles, and our dreams. In our latest series, we explore the Progressive Era, which came to be defined by Teddy Roosevelt and others who believed in a strong, active government that worked on behalf of all Americans rather than the privileged few. As the United States entered the 20th century, these progressives hoped to steer the nation in a bold new direction, to launch an era of reform to restore power to the people. Follow American History Tellers on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Experience all episodes ad-free and be the first to binge the newest season only on Wondery Plus. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Start your free trial today.